Welcome aboard, everyone. Welcome to today's 14 Minutes of Fame. Today we have the wonderful Pat Grosse from, Victoria, Australia. She's otherwise known as the Queen of Grant Writing. Really, that's where you would be. I've got a spare crown for you just here, Pat.
Thank you.
I'll work out how to get that superimposed onto you. No, I probably won't, but because I'm not a real fan of using graphics and Canva and things like that. I like to just post things up. But Pat, you've been doing grant writing, teaching grant writing, and helping write grants for a long time now. How did you fall into this?
Well, I suppose I've got a very long history here, go back 30 odd years. And what I did, I was in a role, believe it or not, that actually looked at getting money out of the European Union, because I was over in the UK. And initially, I was in a unit that was set up to help businesses get ready for 1992, which was like the single market. But we found that actually the one segment that we weren't good at, because I worked in a university research department, was businesses, and we were very good at reaching out to local government, education, voluntary sector, anybody but business, and getting money out of European Union. Now, one day, back in 1991, I remember I had this idea to do a workshop called EU Funding for Beginners. And I wasn't an expert. I was at that time. I was really good at putting events together, and so we did that, and it had 7 people at this first workshop. Turned out to be the bread and butter workshop for at least 10 years, even after I left, 10 years later. And so I developed this understanding of how funding works. Now, in the EU, for example, because I was looking ahead to see what opportunities were coming up, I would read some what I call Agence Europe, which are pink sheets that come out of Brussels every day. So I was actually monitoring government policy or EU policy. Now, a grant is actually, and I'm going down this avenue, but do you need to understand what a grant is? It's not what you want to do. It's like looking at this. You look over there and you see a problem or an opportunity. You've got the resources on the ground. You've got the people, but you don't have the money.
Right.
Somebody else in their ivory tower is looking at the same problem. They've got the money, but they don't have the resources on the ground. They know what they want to achieve. So a really good grant is aligning the two.
Right. Yeah.
So what I would do in my role was, when I was going through those pink sheets, I was looking at the development of policy, because I knew that the grant would be the funding mechanism to get the outcomes.
Right.
So so there was a little bit of trick happening in the back, and we had some really, really successful times when we were actually able to, we didn't just do workshops, we actually did conferences when there were whole new programs being rolled out.
Yeah.
So I really had a really good understanding. So I came anyway, towards the end of being in the UK, I found myself in a role. You always have to be careful what you preach, because I ended up finding myself in a role where I inherited at the start of a multi-million-pound training fund, which needed setting up. So I went through the whole process of setting up. I was also part of the regional government office teams that looked that were contracted to, well, not contracted, we volunteered to assess applications. So I got a whole lot of experience on the other side of the fence before I came to Australia. Anyway, I thought I'd escaped, came to Australia, but I found myself in a government role.
Okay.
Oh, guess what? I was working in funding. So I was
Funding.
actually building the capacity of the organisations that we funded for a few years to help them gain the skills they needed, not just to apply for funding, but it wasn't that. It was more about managing projects and community development and everything else associated with afterwards. So when I finally left and decided to go into business, in order to pay me, my clients needed to apply for the funding.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied for the funding so that they could pay for my services. So that's how the model started. And then eventually I was being approached by different organizations that necessarily weren't going to employ me, but they just wanted the funding.
Mm-hmm.
So which we translated then into grant writing. And right at this moment, I'm sort of almost there, but we're putting years and years of resources into a back-end portal for potential grant writers, etc., to get on a subscription so they can get the resources even if they can't afford our services.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So we met networking 5 years ago, sort of when COVID hit, 4 or 5 years ago, COVID hit in a group called Happy Neighborhood Project. And I used to see, actually, it was neat. It was Happy Neighborhood Project, the Australian chapter, but it was neat to find another Australian there. So, because Happy Neighborhood Project is predominantly American. When you were there, I know at the beginning I had difficulty understanding what it was that you did. I'd hear grant writing, but it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to understand what it is somebody's saying all about it. What is it that you've learned over, like, because I know that you're like me, you would have done face-to-face networking, a lot of it prior to us all being online. But what is it that you learned from all the online networking and the amount that was there, and learning how to do elevator pitches and say what it is that you do simply? What's the biggest thing that you've learned over the years with that?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's not so much learn. Now my business is the community entrepreneur, and that's the bit you probably didn't really understand. Because I have two backdrops, and sorry. Can you just? I just lost my thread. Then can you just repeat that question?
Yeah. What is it?
Yes.
What is it that you've learned from being online with with all the online networking that we did? Because it was so easy to get to, we could go to like multiple of them a day, whereas in the past it was, you had to drive there and back, it might be one a day. But because we were going to so many and we were saying our elevator pitches and we're talking to people all the time, what was it that you've learned the most from all this online networking to bring forward to help improve to really utilize networking as your sales tool for advertising?
All right. This is a bee in my bonnet that I still have to this day. I was actually networking online before COVID.
Okay.
In fact, right back into my days working in government, we actually we were working using online forum called Illuminate, and during the bushfires of 2009, no, yeah, I think it was 2009. No, 2006, I'll go before that. We were actually using it as a communication tool for communities of some of our funded agencies who were actually in the direct line of the bushfires.
Right.
So they were keeping contact with us through this platform. So I've got a long history of these platforms. And what I have learned though is my bugbear is this, that people really don't understand what networking is.
More than anything else. It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, because networking, I mean, is simpler, and the online networking model is absolutely ideal. But networking, because networking is part of a continuum, networking up to collaboration, and you can't go directly to collaboration from networking. There are steps in between, and there is a community development model about that. Now, networking itself is just getting in there, and this is true for face-to-face as well as online. It's not about going in there and coming out and going, my audience isn't in the room. And I heard that many times in the face-to-face environment. Yet the purpose of networking is to get in there and get your business card, and the magic and the secret happens afterwards.
Yeah.
Nurturing happens afterwards. And then when you do that, it's about exchanging your business card. So even online, it's about the chat box.
Yeah, 100%.
You had in the chat box.
How many networking events do you go to and they refuse to give you their contact details? Like as if, oh my God, what if somebody emails me? I mean, on the email side, they go, well, there's no point in them emailing me. I never check my emails. Okay, you should probably do something about that. Or it's like, I don't want them to call me because I don't answer the phone if I don't know who's calling. How on earth are you going to get work if you don't give your contact details? It's amazing, isn't it? How frightened people are of, you know, I love that they're frightened of somebody calling them, but the truth is nobody's calling. Just because you put your details there doesn't mean they're contacting you, but it does mean that you could be contactable easily. They're like, no, you just have to go to LinkedIn or you just have to go to Facebook. Right. So I just have to jump through multiple hoops for you when I'm, wow, I could just go to, if I'm going to social media, I can go to Google and just find someone that's easier to get a hold of. Yeah.
I'm actually putting a LinkedIn article together actually about this because, and then when you get on that one-to-one call with them, it's not about the sale. It's not about selling. If you can sell something because they're interested, they come to you because specifically, yes, fine. But it's again, my audience isn't in the room is one way of looking at it. But another way of looking at it is, and this is where the two steps in between come in, between networking and collaboration, is that you can be talking to a competitor and you can work out between you.
Yeah.
You can share the market basically and cover
Yeah.
all bases because one business alone can't cover all bases.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
and this was the magic of what we did in what I did in the UK, because when I organized all these workshops, and it was like one topic, then we moved on to the next, etc., is that people came back again, and again, and they created a community. They were competitors in every sense of the word. Even if they weren't in the same industry, they were still competing for the European dollars, euros, shall I say.
Yeah.
They were still competing for the same money. But we were getting them right from the beginning because our workshop facilitators would be them.
Yeah.
So they were sharing their knowledge with each other. So we
Yeah.
were actually going up that continuum. Now I know. And what we were doing is we were creating a camaraderie. They were creating that trust amongst competitors, and they were able to help each other. And by
Yeah.
helping each other, they were helping everybody.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the competitor isn't the business down the road. It isn't the business isn't in the next town or city or in the next state. Actually, the competitor for us, from the European Union point of view, was the United States, the rest of the world.
It's so easy. Many think of the competitor as someone that sells the same product that you sell. The competitor is just somebody who's going to end up with the cash instead of you. So let's say I really wanted a grant, but I only have so much money. Let's say it's $1,000 to initially get help from you with a grant, right? But I also need a car. Someone's getting the money. I mean, I need a grant, but I need a car. It's really going to come down to, and that's your competitor. Your competitor is a completely different industry anyway. It's who's getting my cash, like initially. That's where your competitor is going to be. It's not going to be in another grant writing person, someone that's going to help me write a resume or anything like that. It's nothing like that. It's something else entirely. Do I get a great photo of my mom so that then if anything happens to her, I have this amazing photo of her for all of time? Or do I just take her out to dinner for the same amount of money, take her out to dinner and have a memory to remember forever and not the photo? Something's going to get my money. But yes, the competitor is completely different. Thank you, Pat. Really enjoyed chatting to you. I do. Over the years, I've discovered or learned to understand more about grant writing simply because you keep turning up and keep passing that same message on. And one of the big messages I keep getting from you is it's not about what you want. It's about what they're looking to achieve. And when you know how to write according to what they're looking to achieve, it turns out you can both get what you want.
Correct.
Just have to, and it's not so easy. My recommendation is if you want grant money, and grant money, we think it's about the money, But there's something else that comes from getting a grant. It's called publicity. If you get a grant, you could milk the publicity of that for like the 12 months, however long that grant is for. And the offshoot could be so much more funding wise if the publicity. So let's say I found a grant for $2,000, but it costs me $2,000 to hire you to help me write it so that I get the grant. Well, I'm technically not behind money wise because without you, I couldn't have done it. But the publicity I get to go for based off having won a grant, if I work out how to utilize that better, I think also gives you that money aspect that you hadn't thought of. So I think there's a lot that sits behind a grant that we don't really pay enough attention to. We've run out of time now, Pat, but I mean, another great conversation to have at another time is to, what are the other aspects of grants that we're not thinking of? Because the person who wants the grants initially just looking for cash. They've got these amazing skills, and hey, if only someone could pay me for that. But there's other things that sit behind it as well. And I do like the community development because it does very much, it enables two groups to work together in the community that sits behind it. So thank you, Pat, for coming out your 40 minutes of fame today, talking to us about grants and what you've been doing. And it's good to catch up with you.
Thank you. No worries.